Hello.
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 Sorry, y'all got kicked out by the dogs.
Oh,
Oh, it's
problem,
absolutely
problem.
fine.
Thank you for trying to keep them quiet for us. I'm sorry that you had to do that.
Okay.
No problem. Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Okay.
Take care.
No, just trying to kind of get a feel for, like, you know, just if you're on good terms with anybody from your past now, if there's anybody you still talk to. Or has it kind of just been you and your mom?
It's been mostly locally. It's mostly just been my mom and I mostly.
Mm-hmm.
We have other people we can contact and talk to, but other than that, yeah, it's pretty much her and I. Oh, and Magic Chan, Savannah Crizel, and everyone else that's in the yard right now. Hey, Alakazams, y'all on the roof, keep doing your good work. They're
On the roof over there?
Yeah. On the roof, everywhere. We got Pokemon all around in this yard. Yeah, I see them. I see beyond the Iron Curtain, which is just the barrier between our dimension 1218 and our dimension C197, where the majority of our OCs exist and coexist. Every one of them.
Can you elaborate a bit more on that?
Like, you got Sonic the Hedgehog, Mario, Sonic, Kim Possible. Everybody is on that side of the curtain. Iron Man, Batman, everybody! Their life, they exist, coexist in the same dimension. Mobius is Earth. Earth is Mobius. It's the same planet.
You know, there's so many thoughts I don't have it written down, so I just kind of have some sagas. Can you give, and I'll say them, and you can kind of just give your thoughts on them. Liquid Chris?
A doppelganger pretended to be me, and turns out he was just making fun, but I thought he was being serious. I thought he was trying to steal my identity, so I don't know why. I just thought, hey, let's do a singing competition to determine which of us was real and all that. And then I ended up meeting a woman friend of his who I thought was his girlfriend, and she thought that he was me, and I tried to straighten her out and do that right, and then yada 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 yada. Yada 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 yada.
By 2010, Chris had endured over 2 years of non-stop trolling at the hands of the miscreants. This would be enough to burn anyone out on the internet, which seemed to be the case with Chris as he announced he would be taking a step back from online life. As per usual, this did not actually seem to be the case, as only a day later he posted a video babbling about the changing of a voice actor on The Cleveland Show.
Yeah, on The Cleveland Show, you know. I liked Nia Long a lot better as the voice of Roberta Tubbs. Her voice is just too high-pitched and just does not fit the character as best as Nia Long did.
In April, Chris created a profile for himself on OkCupid in an attempt to meet more sweethearts in real life rather than over the internet. He also created a profile on the website Hook Cafe, where he went by the name Direct to Sex. As many noted at the time, Chris now seemed less concerned with starting a relationship than he was with losing his virginity as soon as possible. Trolls quickly discovered these accounts and began spamming them with new fake identities, attempting to create another successful catfish. Chris Chan's accounts were eventually terminated due to the overwhelming number of trolls messaging him, but one managed to slip through the cracks and establish communication, a woman by the name of Jackie Rami. Just as those that preceded her would do, Jackie didn't hesitate to use Chris's obsession with sex to pique his interest. Their conversations became risque almost immediately, with Chris asking her about her previous experience and if she had any STDs, along with him admitting that he himself was still a virgin. Also, like past trolling expeditions, this woman attempted to use Chris's interest in her to get him to create more embarrassing videos. Specifically, she wanted Chris to seductively lick an ice cream cone in order to demonstrate the way he could pleasure her. The sexually inexperienced man was hesitant though, as it seemed he may have learned something resembling a lesson after all the times he had been tricked before. This caution did not last though, as once Jackie asked Chris to prove his dedication to her after she discovered his previous infidelity to Ivy, he quickly sent a video titled "For JR's Eyes Only," doing exactly what she asked except without the ice cream cone.
Oh, and here's the fun part. I can roll my tongue. I put it in there and extend it while it's in there.
In addition to this video, Jackie also requested Chris to finally confront Michael Snyder, the manager of Chris's old favorite hangout spot, The Game Place. Christian had harbored a grudge against Snyder after receiving a lifetime ban from his store back in 2008, but had never acted on it. It seemed like Jackie had given him the confidence he needed to do just that, as on April 12th, 2010, Chris traveled to his old stomping grounds with the goal of patching things up with Snyder and lifting the ban. He entered with his camera hidden in his pocket in order to secretly record the encounter for Jackie. When Chris approached Snyder, he initially tried to be cordial as he asked if they could patch things up and end the suspension. Unfortunately, Snyder was having none of it, as he simply responded no to his request. Chris immediately got frustrated as he began pleading with Michael to change his mind, insisting that he turned over a new leaf and deserved a second chance. Snyder stood his ground as he told Chris to leave, which he eventually did, but not without getting the last word.
The dude who banned me his name is Michael Snyder, possibly a Jew considering the last name. Nothing bad against the Jews, but I'm just throwing it out there.
It's not entirely clear where this sudden bout of anti-Semitism had come from, since Chris had not said much about Jewish people in the past. Around this time, Chris was also making more of an effort to find new Gentile friends, with him attending a local music festival called Fridays After 5. The miscreants quickly learned about this and started going to the festival themselves in order to secretly photograph Chris and observe him in the wild. What was immediately apparent was that he was trying to phase out his classic sweater/medallion style, instead favoring a denim vest, t-shirt, sunglasses, and dog tags, similar to the outfit worn in his Rollin' and Trollin' video. Beneath the shirt, Chris wore a sports bra on which he wrote the phrase, "Want Woman." It's important to note that Fridays After 5 was advertised as a family-friendly gathering. While at this event, Chris would also make the effort to pick up ladies. However, he preferred to go about doing this in his own unique Chris Chan way, as he still lacked the confidence to simply approach them and start up a conversation. According to some trolls that were there, Chris would oftentimes use a zoom lens attachment for his DSi as a makeshift telescope to spy on potential mates from afar. On another occasion, he reportedly tied a note to a small rock and tossed it towards a woman he was interested in. These tactics ultimately proved unsuccessful. On the evening of June 4th, 2010, Chris had a few too many drinks at a bar after attending Fridays After 5. In his drunken state, he decided to drive down to the game place with the goal of taking a picture of Michael Snyder to use as a dartboard. When he arrived, he stood outside and began taking pictures through the window. Snyder immediately noticed and called the police, who arrived on the scene soon after. As he watched the police approach, Chris ran to his car and tried to drive off, but was forced to stop when Snyder chased him down and Chris almost ran him over. As Chris talked to the police, Michael had made a post about the incident on his Facebook.
Christian is in my parking lot right now being grilled by the police. He took pictures of my daughter and tried to run me over with his car. They witnessed this, and I bet they still do nothing about it.
Schneider's prediction seemed right on the money, as Chris was only told to delete the photos he had taken, and was otherwise free to return home with nothing but a warning. A couple days later, Chris made a video addressing his run-in with the law where he proudly admitted that he took a picture of the store owner, but stated that he had no intention of taking any photographs of his daughter. In addition, he also claimed to have not been intoxicated, as he had only had one beer. Yet again, Chris ceased all video production and made yet another effort to keep a lower profile online. That was until the trolls began to mess with his greatest love, video games.
Hey, yo, Joe. You got nothing going on for you, 'cause you know what? I removed it.
Back in May of 2010, Christian had been informed by his former sweetheart, Panda Halo, that the miscreants had bugged his PS3 several years prior, which was how they had hacked into his PSN account so many times. The device that Panda pointed to as the bug was actually just the Wi-Fi antenna, but this did not stop Chris from posting a video in which he proudly showed off that he had removed it. When he realized that he had once again been tricked, Chris decided to take matters into his own hands. He created a new alias for himself by the name of Jenkins Jinkies, which he planned to use in order to infiltrate the miscreants. Chris did not start to fully utilize the new persona until July, when he went to the Quickie and created a page called Coffee Place. He wrote about his distaste for the staff at a cafe he regularly visited with his father Bob, commenting on how he believed the employees would often discriminate against them for being white. Not wanting the trolls to catch on to his true identity, Christian pretended to be a 14-year-old boy who had witnessed a recent confrontation between Chris, Bob, and one of the managers. Shortly thereafter, the miscreants quickly welcomed Jenkins Jinkies into their fold, knowing full well who he really was. Upon joining, Chris was informed that Jenkins Jinkies was already being considered to join the inner circle of the trolls. This would reportedly give him administrative privileges to Encyclopedia Dramatica and the Quickie, as well as making him among the first to know about any new trolling schemes. But in order to join this exclusive club, he would have to film an introductory video about how much he hated Chris. In an attempt to conceal his identity, Chris filmed the video in a thrift store so the trolls would not recognize the background of his home. As a disguise, he lowered his voice and wore a t-shirt over his head. He also talked about how much he hated Chris due to his abuse of the social security system and dislike of men.
He is a lazy slob. The money is wasted on him. He doesn't have to work for this money. Damn him. And also, he is unfriendly to us males. He should be friendly to his males. Really ticks me off.
Once posted, the miscreants invented a forum named the Trollin' Train and informed Jenkins Jinkies that it was the top secret club for only the upper echelon of their secret trolling society. Chris's first act of business was to create a backstory for his character in order to be more believable. He claimed that his real name was Junior Jenkins, and that his family had recently moved into a house across the street from the Chandlers, and included a detailed explanation as to why he was not gay. For seemingly no reason, Mr. Jenkins told a long story about how he had been raped by two boys at a summer camp when he was just 7 years old. A few years later, he and a male friend decided to have sex in order to see how it felt. Chris described their encounter in great detail, ending with Junior being disgusted and throwing up. Even though everything written here was fiction, Chris had just created a shockingly explicit story involving minors. Some speculated he'd done this in order to humiliate the trolls by implying they were all gay. Others wondered if this was actually Chris expressing some repressed homosexual urges, or maybe this story was more autobiographical than he was letting on. As time passed, Chris continued using Jenkins Jinkies to mess with the trolls in any way he could think of, with them happily playing along. On one occasion, Christian revealed that he had thwarted a plot by the miscreants to hack into his PSN account and corrupt his video game save data. It should go without saying that this was not a real plan and was only thought up by the trolls to make Chris think he had defeated them, but he still took the opportunity to praise himself on the Jenkins Jinkies account.
I have to hand it to him. He makes it frustrating to troll him. It's like we have to pay airfare or hitchhike dangerously and do it old-fashioned with accordion cameras and shit like that.
Later, Chris learned of another troll plot to dig up the grave of his beloved dog Patty. Using his persona, he nipped this plan in the bud by making up a story about Junior Jenkins going to scope out the gravesite.
I personally took a closer look at Patty's grave. It is harder to break in than Fort f***ing Knox. The body is buried deep underground with cement blocks covering the site, and her heavy doghouse is on top of those cement blocks. I wouldn't be surprised if they cemented her grave as well. Also, the site is heavily surrounded by trees and heavy branches. It's like deepest in the mine shaft with cave-ins happening all the time.
He apparently decided that this would not be enough of a deterrent to keep the potential grave robbers away, as he later made up another story about how the ghosts of Patty guarded the Chandler house alongside the spirit of younger Chris, as if to imply that he felt his younger self had died.
I have encountered the spirits of young Christopher Weston Chandler and Patty protecting the Chandler household. I warn you all right here and now, stay away from his house and Patty's grave. It is not worth it to have to suffer the nightmare that can render you as damn silent as your autistic child. And Patty is definitely not friendly to our dark kind.
On August 27th, Chris posted a video talking about how, due to a miscommunication with Sony technical support while trying to reformat his PS3, he accidentally deleted all of his save data. Surprisingly, he said he felt relieved by this, as if a huge weight had been taken off his shoulders. After so many years of trolls hacking into his PlayStation account, there was a certain poetic irony to the fact that it was Chris himself who ended up destroying it. Coincidentally, at this same time, Clyde Cash posted on the Troll and Train forum, offering an over $9,000 bounty to anyone who could steal Chris's PS3 and film themselves destroying it. Chris decided that, since all of his data had been wiped from it anyway, he would destroy the console himself and collect the prize money as his final revenge against the trolls. Originally, he planned to do this while disguised as Jenkins Jinkies. However, he ultimately decided to do it as himself in order to fully savor this victory as his own. In case anyone was unconvinced that it was thoroughly destroyed, Chris later uploaded a video of himself running it over with his car, and another of him stabbing it with a pair of scissors. As you can imagine, when he tried to collect the money, Chris was met with some pushback. He was directed first to Surfshack Tito, who he was told was in charge of the miscreants' finances. Tito claimed that Chris was not eligible to claim the reward as the rules explicitly state that the PS3 had to be destroyed by a troll. The autistic man fired back by saying that he had made the video in collaboration with Jenkins Jinkies, and after some debate, Tito finally relented. They agreed to meet at the Chick-fil-A in the Fashion Square Mall, where Chris was told an agent of Tito's dressed in a pickle suit would deliver the money. Chris waited for nearly an hour before realizing that nobody was coming and returned home. He then emailed Tito, assuming that it was just a miscommunication, and arranged a second meetup. This time, the Nickelodeon cartoon character told Chris that his agent would be a woman with a tattoo of a pickle on her breast. Chris returned to the mall the next day, and once again he waited for nearly an hour, but no one ever showed up. Upon the second duping, Christian emailed Tito furiously, accusing the troll of ripping him off and demanding he simply deliver the money to his house. In a turn of events, Tito claimed that his agent had been at the mall and had accidentally delivered the money to a different Christian Weston Chandler, implying it to be Liquid Chris. With this, Chris Chan finally realized he was being strung along and gave up. There was no money, and there never had been. It was all just another prank to make Chris look like a fool. After this ordeal, the defeated man traded in $100 worth of games to GameStop in order to afford a new PS3, despite him claiming earlier that he was moving on to a new chapter in his life by destroying the old one. In addition, he also retired the Jenkins Jinkies persona out of fear that the police may mistake him for a real troll and arrest him. Throughout 2010, Chris for some reason continued talking with Jackie on a somewhat frequent basis despite all signs directing him to the fact that it was just another troll. They had gone back and forth on whether they should begin dating or just stay friends. But on September 13th, that changed, when Chris posted a video declaring his love for her. In this upload, he also flipped through a slideshow of drawings he had made depicting what their first date would be like, but the glare from the camera made it so that these were impossible to read. After this video was posted, Chris received an email from a man calling himself Robert Paulson, who claimed to be Jackie's real-life boyfriend. He included a nude picture of her to prove he was telling the truth. When Chris confronted her about this, Jackie claimed to not know anyone by the name of Robert, and concluded that it must have been her jealous ex-boyfriend Lars McNulty. Jackie told Chris that she was worried about Lars, as he had apparently proven himself to be dangerous in the past. She asked him to make a video intimidating the violent ex so he'd back off, which Chris quickly agreed to do. The video depicted him smashing a model of the Titanic made out of Legos, since Jackie had told him that Lars loved collecting model boats. She also requested Chris say the line, "Consequences will never be the same," a reference to Jesse Slaughter, another trolling victim from that era. Upon uploading, Chris received another email from Lars, this time including a picture of a black man that he claimed to be a photograph of himself. Chris posted another video in response to this, once again threatening Lars and stating his belief that the man in the photograph was not really him. But Jackie was quick to inform her protector that the person in the picture was indeed Lars McNulty. On September 29th, Jackie told Chris that Lars had recently sent her a model boat he had made out of popsicle sticks and a condom, and she asked him to make another intimidating video to get him to back off.
And she got fed up with all the goddamn boats all over the goddamn apartment. Half of them not even taking out their package. Because you just bought them for the sake of buying them. I mean, you mofo. You even bought ridiculous paint and accessory kits for boats you didn't even own. You paid for a whole bunch of useless stuff you're never gonna use anyway, you jiving turkey. Yeah, well, I call you a jiving turkey, mofo. And that's what you is, yo, jiving turkey. Jiving squash, shoot that old turkey.
As this drama continued, Jackie also told Chris the story of how she had gotten pregnant with Lars's child when they were still dating. Upon learning of this, Lars forcibly aborted the fetus by making her drink what she described as a Haitian voodoo potion. With all this buildup and all of their history laid out on the table, the stage was set for Chris and Lars to finally speak, which is exactly what happened on November 6th, when the two of them had a lengthy phone conversation.
Yo, who did it? Yo, this be Liza and shit. Who did?
This is Christian.
Yo, Christian C. How y'all doing, dog?
Well, I know what you did do to Jackie a while back. You bought her coffee and killed the unborn child.
Y'all know about getting tormented and shit, ain't you? Tormented for your differences and shit.
Yeah, I got pretty much tormented for my autism and slow-mindedness that has happened to me before. But I ain't like that. I have respect for my black man, and I have respect for you, man, because we cool. And I enjoy the comedies. I enjoy the TV shows I get from the black men.
So you can tell me, bro. Y'all really want Jackie or not? Or y'all want your video games more than you actually want Jackie? If you want Jackie, you can be honest with me.
I want Jackie, and I want to be able to keep my video games.
While all of this was occurring, the love interest used her position as Chris's sweetheart to do what pretty much every other catfish had done before. Convince him to make even more embarrassing videos of himself. The sheer volume of these was unmatched, as not even Ivy had gotten Chris to make a fool of himself on camera as many times as Jackie did. A few highlights include a video of Chris dressed as the Dragon Ball Z character Mr. Popo, in which he wears blackface, a video of him pretending to give birth to a teddy bear, and one of himself making spaghetti, which he had to mime since the kitchen was still too much of a mess to do any actual cooking in. October of 2010 commenced Jackie's naughty, no-trick, all-treat 31 Days of Halloween contest, in which Chris was to make a video dressed as a new character every day for a month. While he failed to meet this goal, he did produce a fair number of videos for the contest, each more ridiculous than the last. A couple standouts include one of Chris dressed as the McDonald's mascot Grimace while singing about living with autism, and another of him transforming into Chris Chan Sonic Chew. Despite jumping through all these hoops and humiliating himself time and time again, Jackie was still not satisfied with Chris's offerings. They began fighting, and eventually, in November, the two of them decided to break up. Jackie asked Chris if he wanted to just be friends, but he stated he was still interested in leaving the possibility of a sexual relationship on the table. After this, the couple stopped talking for a while as Chris took another well-deserved break from the internet, choosing instead to spend his time volunteering at his church and taking care of his father, who was recovering from colon cancer surgery. Chris did actually vanish from the internet for a few months after the Jackie saga. Nonetheless, he wouldn't be gone forever, and it seemed as though he was taking this time to discover a little bit more about himself. On February 25th, 2011, Jackie emailed Chris to wish him a happy birthday and to check in on how he was doing. It took her former boyfriend an entire month to respond, but when he did, he had some big news to reveal. He'd recently started referring to himself as a tomgirl. Basically, this was the opposite of a tomboy. Rather than a woman who dressed and behaved more masculine, a tomgirl was a man who dressed and behaved more feminine. Chris had begun growing out his hair, wearing nail polish, and even pierced his ears. He made sure to stress that this did not mean he was gay. He just enjoyed the style. Christian also sent her a series of pictures of his new look, which were of course leaked to the Quickie. He confronted her about this, as he had sent those pictures in confidence, but she deflected, blaming a recent hack on the PlayStation Network for the images becoming public. Chris quickly apologized, and stated he just wasn't ready for the world to see him like this. Even his own parents were not supporting him. His cancer-riddled father had called him homophobic slurs, and his mother had tried to forcibly cut off his hair and told him, "I didn't raise a daughter." In fact, Chris's close relationship with his parents was becoming quite strained around this time. In further emails to another gal pal, he told her the story of how he had planned to travel to Maryland for the video game convention MagFest a month prior. However, when he told his parents about it, they became livid. They seemed to believe that Chris would be tearing the family apart just by leaving for a few days, and his mother even took it a step further by threatening to commit suicide. The stress and drama of the past few years had clearly taken a toll on Bob and Barbara, as even the idea of their adult son leaving their sight for just a weekend was enough to send them into a frenzy. When the new tomgirl lifestyle did become public, Chris was sent a link to a troll-created site called Tomboys and Tomgirls of Virginia. Chris quickly joined under the name Kooky Dashi and introduced himself as a heterosexual tomgirl, although it wouldn't be long before he began to think of himself as a lesbian instead, despite the fact he still identified as a man at this time. Chris also said he had recently started using the woman's bathroom when in public, which had resulted in a quote-unquote stereotypical male brute yelling at him. Despite this, he stated he was still planning on using the woman's room as long as he was wearing a skirt. As this was all going down, Chris and Jackie somewhat rekindled their relationship, although to a lesser extent than before. This basically just resulted in him making more embarrassing videos for her, albeit these were much more sexual and disturbing than the ones prior. For example, Jackie told Chris to make a series in which he took his blow-up doll on a date, pretending it was her. In these videos, Chris danced with the doll before driving it to McDonald's, eating their food together, making out, and finally becoming intimate. Chris would later admit to having enjoyed being bossed around by women, which would explain much of his past behavior. By July of 2011, Chris's profile on the Tomboys and Tomgirls of Virginia forum was leaked to the Quickie. He took the opportunity to introduce himself fully to the other forum users, and lamented the fact that the trolls had once again tracked him down, not realizing he had been talking to trolls this entire time. Some of the other forum members offered to help Chris track down the miscreants and bring them to justice. They began sending him what they claimed to be personal information on some of his most prominent enemies. This would be the start of the next big story arc in Chris's life, known as the Calling Out Saga. You see, with the information given to him by the TTV forum members, on August 6, Chris began making a series of videos threatening the miscreants. Obviously, the information he had was completely false, but he took it at face value. His first upload targeted Surfshack Tito, who Chris claimed was really named Don and lived in Michigan. In addition, he showed a fraction of a picture he believed to be of Tito. The Sonic Chew creator's demands were for Tito to make a video apologizing to him in the Wallflower, and to send him $1,000 in unmarked bills. This final request would soon be walked back as Chris learned that it would technically count as extortion. That same day, Chris made another video calling out a troll named Thorg, who was allegedly the one who had leaked Chris's Tomboys and Tomgirls of Virginia profile to the Quickie, as well as being the one responsible for posting embarrassing images of Chris to a publicly accessible billboard in Times Square back in 2009. Just like with Tito, Chris claimed to know Thorg's real name and location, and showed a fraction of his picture. He demanded Thorg place a statement on the Times Square billboard clarifying that he was not a homosexual, and to leave it up there for a week. This request would also be walked back a few days later when he learned that the billboard was no longer active, but he still demanded a public apology regardless. For both Thorg and Tito, Chris set the deadline for August 31st. The revenge-filled Tomgirl's next target was Alec Benson Leary, or as he called him, Christopher from Texas. His demands for Alec were simple enough. Apologize for the copyright infringement he had committed with Asperchew. It seemed that Chris's opinions on Alec were on a pendulum. One day he might be friendly with him and try to make peace. The next he'd be angrily calling him a hack fraud ripoff artist. The first of these trolls to respond was Tito, who uploaded a video in which he pretended to be terrified of Chris and fully gave in to his demands.
And I'll get you the money. I'll get you the $1,000 and the interest. Just don't release that video. With the picture of me, just don't do any more, man.
The footage he used was actually of a YouTuber named Mr. Pregnant, but Chris had no problem believing it was really Tito. He told him that, as long as he received the money, no personal information would be revealed. Apparently, he had forgotten that he had rescinded that demand. Thorg, on the other hand, was not convinced. Chris decided to make an example out of him, as he revealed his full name and picture on August 12th, several weeks before the deadline. The thing was, this image he believed to be of Thorg was actually just the popular meme, Butthurt Dweller. This did not stop Chris from brutally mocking his appearance as well as lecturing him for his atheism. Much like Thorg, Chris revealed Alec's information before the deadline. Like everyone else, the picture Chris believed to be of him was actually just another meme. This time, it was of the YouTuber Fat Man, who was famous for making videos in which he ate obscene amounts of food. Christian decided that the best way to rub salt in the wound would be to devour an entire microwave pizza on camera, mocking Alec's videos. Next on the chopping block was Jack Thaddeus. Chris revealed his real name to be Ahuvia, who in reality was an infamous online communist and another frequent target of trolls. Chris was also informed that Jack was in fact transgender, which he berated him for. He said that despite being a tomgirl, he was proud to be a man, and would never get gender reassignment surgery. He also told Jack that, even if he did transition, he would not be considered a woman as he did not have a uterus. Chris's final target was Blue Spike. This time, the person believed to be him was a young man named Ness Helper, another favorite of the trolls. Chris requested an apology from Blue Spike, and also demanded that he make people stop shouting memes like Jule and Ian Brandon Anderson at him. It seemed as though Chris forgot that Ian was started by Liquid Chris, not Blue Spike. At this point, even though all of the intel was completely false, Chris believed that he'd finally gotten the upper hand on the trolls who tormented him for years. In Christian's mind, this was his greatest victory yet, and he was going to savor every moment of it. The thing was, a tragedy would soon strike that would cut the calling out saga short, and shake up Chris's life in the worst way possible.
Yeah, okay, yeah, it's recording. So, here we are around the Christmas tree. We're gonna open presents.
Right.
Okay, well, first off, I have a card from my family. Your father, you read the card.
I see. I want to thank you all for your support and love throughout my fantastic love quest. Pooey.
On September 6, 2011, Bob Chandler passed away after a long battle with many health problems such as a heart condition and colon cancer. Chris talked to Jackie about it over email the next day, in which he told her he had gotten no sleep since his father's death, and that he had taken up Bob's responsibilities of handling the household finances. He also told her he was having trouble making sense of it all, as in 2009, Chris had a dream in which the Grim Reaper told him his father would not die until 2015. Even the trolls mourned Bob's death. From September 10th to the 19th, the Quickie was shut down and replaced with a screen in memoriam of the family's patriarch. For about a month after his loss, Christian would take another break from the internet. In the time following Bob's death, Chris and Barbara had a great deal of difficulty coping with his loss. Not only had he been the primary financial provider for the family, but he had also been their rock, the stoic head holding them all together. Without his guidance, the mother and son began to feel alone and vulnerable. It was during this time period that Barbara allegedly began demanding that Chris sleep in her room so she could call upon him if need be. Whenever he tried to refuse and return to his own bedroom, she would reportedly become enraged, destroying her son's possessions until she got what she wanted. Clearly things were going poorly for the Chandler family, and it wouldn't be long until a new controversy dragged them back into the spotlight. On October 28th, as Chris and Barbara were shopping, they noticed a banner outside the game place, stating that it was now under the ownership of two people named Mike and Madeline. They were curious if the sign was referring to the manager of the store who banned Chris, and as a result, the mother and son went in to find out. Unfortunately, it was his arch nemesis that had purchased the business, and almost immediately after they entered the establishment, Snyder had arrived on the scene and tried to remove them. As they were being escorted back to their car, Chris pulled out his 3DS and hastily took a few pictures of the man. This resulted in chaos breaking out between the three of them. While we don't know the exact details of this battle, it resulted in the police being called, with Chris getting charged with a Class 5 felony after hitting Snyder with his car. While this was happening, Barbara reportedly stepped in and tried to stop the police from arresting her son, resulting in her being charged with assaulting an officer. They were both sent to jail, where they were bailed out the next day by Chris's pastoral counselor, Rocky Shoemaker. A few days later, the two appeared in court where they were formally charged. The now fatherless autistic Tom girl also received 2 additional charges: assault and battery, as well as trespassing. Their lawyer was a man named Rob Bell, whom they had hired using the remainder of the inheritance Bob left for them, which Chris recalled to be in the hundreds of thousands. In December, Rocky Shoemaker received a call from a troll who was pretending to be a court-appointed psychiatrist in order to get more information about the case. She was initially hesitant to talk to him, as she had apparently been receiving a number of suspicious phone calls as of late, but it didn't take long for the troll to start getting information. He asked if it would be possible to schedule a meeting about Chris's mental health at the Chandler house, but she advised against it due to the increasingly dismal state of the property. According to her, not only had their hoarding problem gotten significantly worse over time, but they had also been infested with insects. It had gone so bad that in Bob's final days, he had to be quarantined in the hospital due to the sheer amount of bug bites all over his body. With the court case ongoing, Chris decided he needed a new way to vent to the world. This was when in January of 2012, he made his Facebook account public and began writing several posts detailing his worsening mental state. In one of these ramblings, he told the story of how he had recently gone to the Fashion Square Mall in order to distribute flyers warning people to stay away from the game place. As he was taking a rest at the Starbucks, a security guard approached him, holding several of the flyers in his hand. Chris quickly fled out the back through the JCPenney, despite the security guard telling him he wasn't in any trouble. Later that month, he made a post asking people to help him track down his former friend Megan Schroeder, as he had come to the conclusion that she was the one responsible for everything bad that happened in his life.
Hey everyone, I have most urgent news. It is final in my mind and from my mother as an on-air witness of her consorting with Michael Snyder long before November 2007. Megan Schroeder is the seed of the whole hate and smear campaign against me on the internet. If any of you all know where she is or have clues of her or her brother John Schroeder current whereabouts, please inform me on this wall. Post haste. She is needed brought to me, my mother and our attorney, for great questioning and a huge piece of my mind.
A couple days after this incoherent message to Facebook, Christian would publicly share what he believed to be her home address, although it was quickly discovered to be false. As the day of sentencing grew closer, Chris only became more anxious and depressed. On March 31st, he made a post about how he was worried he would spend the rest of his life in prison, with his greatest concern being he would die a virgin. In response, a woman named Renee offered to get Chris in contact with a prostitute, which he happily agreed to. Only a few days later, he emailed the Facebook user thanking her for the help and described his experience. The escort he had hired was a woman named Mia. They met at a motel, and although he was put off by the fact she smelled like weed, he seemed to like her a lot. Apparently, she was half Cherokee, a fact that Chris felt like he could relate to. He then went into graphic detail about every aspect of his first sexual experience with a non-troll. On July 10th, Chris and Barbara's arraignment finally arrived. Two users of the Quickie forums were in attendance to report back to their comrades over what went down. Christian was allegedly very on edge and nervous the entire time, as he constantly fiddled with his glasses and moved around in his chair. At one point, his lawyer referred to him as an autistic adult child, which he was visibly upset by, although he said nothing. In the end, they were both found guilty on all charges. Barbara was sentenced to community service and 2 years probation, while Chris was sentenced to community service, 1 year probation, and court-mandated therapy. In addition, they were required to cover the medical expenses Snyder had accrued from being hit by their car. When asked if he understood, Chris allegedly said, "Yes, but I don't think that bribing liar deserves a red cent." Chris's depressed and unhinged Facebook posts only worsened after the sentencing. An increasing number of them focused on the subject of his teenage years. He had always cited high school as the happiest time of his life, and as his situation got worse and worse, he seemed to want nothing more than to retreat to those happy memories. He began tracking down members of his graduating class and sending them gifts, although exactly what they were is unknown. This did not seem to bring him closer to them in the way he probably expected though. As his posting continued, his friend list grew smaller and smaller, which only served to make him more upset. In an email to a gal pal, Chris stated he viewed his high school classmates as part of his family, despite the fact he had not seen a majority of them in over a decade. In October, Chris filmed a video with the help of Rocky Shoemaker in which he showed off a LEGO reconstruction of his high school that he claimed took him over 30 hours to build. He took the viewer through a guided tour, demonstrating how he had recreated every room with almost all of his old teachers and classmates. The video was filmed at McDonald's, presumably due to the fact that his house was a mess. On December 11th, 2013, Alec Benson Leary leaked a new house tour video Chris had made. We don't know for certain how he obtained it, when it was recorded, or why it was made at all, but the state of the home was substantially worse than the first tour from 2009. Multiple rooms had been rendered unusable due to the amount of clutter. The yard had become overgrown, and Chris struggled to navigate the stairs and hallways, as even they had been drowned in garbage. The Chandler's residence was a disaster waiting to happen. It was only a matter of time until this living situation would lead to calamity.
Greene County investigators are looking into the cause of a house fire early this morning. It started at about 3 o'clock this morning at a home on Branchland Court. That's in the southern part of the county. We're told the fire started in a first-floor bathroom, but got quickly out of control and eventually shot through the roof.
In the early morning of January 10th, 2014, a 911 operator was called in relation to a fire at the Chandler residence. Reportedly, Chris had been making himself a cup of coffee with their Keurig machine that sat outside of the bathroom, as the clutter in the kitchen meant there was no usable space for it in there. Due to the frequent opening and closing of the bathroom door, the protective outer coating of the cord had worn away. So when Chris turned on the coffee machine that fateful morning, a stray spark escaped and quickly began spreading out of control in the clutter-filled home. The mother and son initially tried to extinguish the flames, but it wasn't long before they were forced to evacuate. When firefighters arrived, they had no choice but to enter through the windows as the doorways were obstructed by mounds of trash. Chris and Barbara managed to escape the blaze and took shelter in a neighbor's residence. The flames raged on for several hours before finally being extinguished at around 7 o'clock in the morning. In the end, one firefighter suffered minor injuries, and the only death was the Chandler's pet cat, Scamper. When it was safe to re-enter and access the damage, Chris found that most of his old drawings had been left intact, although his LEGO high school was warped and melted beyond repair. The widow and her mentally disabled son were soon moved into a temporary home provided by their insurance company while their house was being repaired. In response, the trolls decided to band together and use their community for good. Null, the founder of the Quickie Forums, organized a donation drive to help. They managed to raise over $1,000, and a few weeks later, Chris received their care package filled with toiletries, canned goods, art supplies, a few gift cards for restaurants, and a $500 check made out to Barbara. It even included a heartfelt note from Null wishing him the best. Chris Chan soon went to Facebook to thank everyone who donated, although he still expressed his desire for the Quickie to be removed from the internet. Despite the terrible circumstances, this was a rare moment of unity between Chris and his trolls, marking a significant turning point in their relationship. The old guard of the miscreants would begin to back off, and Null would eventually rebrand the Quickie Forums to no longer make it a space focused solely on mocking Christian Weston Chandler. In order to help with the recent debts accrued from legal fees in the fire, Chris began to list old possessions online for sale. He attempted to sell a collection of pornographic DVDs for the non-negotiable price of $1,000, although it seems unlikely that anyone actually bought them. He also listed some pieces from Bob's collection on eBay, including a violin and a collection of old model plane kits. At around the same time he was doing this, Chris also posted a list of LEGO sets he wanted and added them to an online wish list in hopes that someone would buy them for him. It was soon calculated that the combined cost of these sets would be over $3,000, and some wondered if he was trying to take advantage of the recent generosity from his troll base. In addition, Chris also put up a listing for an original drawing of Sonichu and Rosechu, with the starting bid set at $20 and the buy it now price set at $100. Once the trolls discovered this, they began raising the bid to absurd levels. By the end of the auction, the drawing had sold for over $13,000. It was then quickly removed as the trolls obviously had no intentions of paying. It took until the end of June for the drawing to finally sell to a genuine buyer for the price of $200. After this, eBay became a somewhat steady source of income for Chris. He began selling art commissions on the site. An uncolored sketch cost $50, a fully colored piece cost $100, and a frame drawing cost $200. He actually began making a decent amount of money, but some were quick to accuse him of spending all of it on Lego sets rather than supporting his family. Chris defended himself by arguing the only sets he had bought were to replace the ones lost in the fire. As Chris's eBay business grew throughout 2014, he expanded to sell a new kind of product, replicas of his Sonichu and Rosechu medallions. These cost $30 a piece, and he even included a special offer in which every full-color commission came with a free medallion. He claimed this was done to help his mother receive some much-needed dental work. Despite the apparent success of this new venture, some of Chris's customers were complaining about how long it took for their medallions to arrive. The most infamous of these was a man only referred to as Mr. Smith. Chris sent many angry messages to him, as he was upset with the fact that if too many people filed for refunds from him on eBay, his PayPal account was in danger of getting overdrawn. It at one point was so bad that Chris went to Facebook and publicly shared Mr. Smith's full name, hometown, and eBay username. The post was quickly deleted, and Christian issued a half-hearted apology for the incident. When Mr. Smith finally received the medallion he had ordered, he found that Chris had given Sonichu an angry expression, with glowing red eyes as opposed to the friendly look that was advertised. The accompanied certificate was also heavily smudged with ink. When Mr. Smith filed another complaint against the artist on eBay, Chris fired back by saying he made the medallion that way deliberately, as revenge for the supposed bullying against him. The artist and the art collector continued talking over the next month, negotiating to find a way to make things right between the two of them. They eventually agreed that Chris would draw a free full-color commission for Mr. Smith as an apology for the doxing. Unfortunately, the end result was probably not what the customer had in mind, as it depicted Mr. Smith walking through a door with a bucket of ice about to fall on his head, and Sonichu standing off to the side scolding him for his lack of patience. In the end, eBay offered Mr. Smith a full refund, and Chris decided to move his business to Etsy. But this was not the only transition Chris would be making. Throughout 2014, Christian Weston Chandler's gender identity continued to evolve. In an email with a gal pal, Chris revealed that he had begun to tuck his genitals, which he referred to as his ugly growth, between his legs so he didn't have to look at them. He would also begin referring to himself with such terms as a lesbian identified male, a tomgirl intersex a female soul with male body, and a lesbian tomgirl transgender male. At one point, it was revealed that Chris had received a piercing on his genitals around the place where a woman's clitoris would be. He referred to this piercing as an unclit. Chris had also begun a homemade hormone treatment involving the consumption of copious amounts of soy. But it wasn't until December of 2014 that Chris told the world that he wanted to be referred to by female pronouns and had started calling herself Christine.
How we do it.
In November of 2014, Sega released their new games Sonic Boom and Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. These were intended to be a reboot of the franchise, and featured new redesigns of all the main characters. When Christine learned of this, she became livid. Specifically, there was one aspect in particular that really upset her, as she expressed in a comment on a Facebook post advertising the game.
Sonic's arms are not blue. I am boycotting this game until they change his arm color back now.
For some reason, this color swap deeply angered Christine, and she continued posting about it regularly over the coming months. Even though other characters had received more substantial changes, it was solely the color of Sonic's arms that she fixated on. The closest thing to a real reason she provided for this hatred was that the blue arms caused her to experience sensory overload. Eventually, her constant comments on posts advertising the game got her blocked by both the official Sega and Sonic the Hedgehog Facebook accounts. In November, Chris Chan created a Facebook page called Keep Sonic Original. She also made edited versions of the game's cover art that included warnings not to purchase the upcoming release, and encouraged members to print this edited cover out to insert into the sleeves of Sonic Boom cases at stores. As Miss Chandler continued her crusade against Sega, many people spoke up to ask why she cared so much. When one person pointed out that Sonic Boom wasn't even canon to the mainline series, Christine responded angrily about how she had never understood the concept of canon. There were others who mentioned that the game was reviewing and selling poorly, meaning it would most likely die out in popularity soon and cause Sega to return to Sonic's original design. But Christine was not willing to wait for this.
No, we need to kill Sega into recalling everything now, even if we have to do something like put knives and bombs to their throats.
After this threat, the group was dissolved. Undeterred, she immediately created a new page called Fix Sonic's Arms Immediately Sega. She continued making vague threats against Sega and its employees here, and it was clear her anger was only rising with time. It wouldn't be long until things hit a boiling point. This leads us to December 26, 2014, when Christine and Barbara went to the Fashion Square Mall to do some shopping. Upon arrival, the two split up, and Christine made her way to GameStop. She had recently been banned from the store for vandalizing copies of Sonic Boom with her fake cover art, and was planning to apologize and beg to be allowed back in. Unfortunately, this did not go as she hoped, as the store's managers immediately asked her to leave. They argued for a few minutes before one of the employees called security and Christine finally relented. On her way out though, she pulled out a bottle of pepper spray and showered it in the direction of one of the employees. After the altercation, Christine hurried back to the car and went home, leaving her mother behind. The police soon arrived at the mall, drove Barbara back to the house, and arrested Christine on felony charges of unlawful release of a dangerous gas. She was held in jail for 3 days before being released on bail. Upon arriving home, Christine wrote a lengthy post giving her side of the story.
In the end, I was the victim. I did not cause the original provoking. The assistant manager made the first attack onto me and provoked my defensive response. I was minding my own business, not looking for trouble, and then he startled me, similar to a potential rapist in a dark alley in a big city. Any of you would have done the same, as I have in Defense and Escape.
For years, Chris Chan's presence was limited to the World Wide Web's underbelly, within the depths of Encyclopedia Dramatica and eventually Kiwi Farms. But the GameStop incident quickly transcended both of those spaces, becoming the first to attract mainstream attention. People from all corners of the internet chimed in to mock Christine for her outburst. Even the Sonic the Hedgehog brand itself got in on it when their official Twitter made a reference to Sonichu. And ironically, the Sonic Boom cartoon adaptation would eventually make a joke about Christine's obsession with Sonic's arm color.
Game companies always ruin their beloved franchises.
And they never should have changed the color of Tomatopotamus's legs.
Following the incident and public mockery that surrounded it, Chris Chan would attend several court hearings in relation to the macing over the next few months, as she was repeatedly granted continuance after continuance. As you would expect, trolls were in attendance for every one of these hearings. According to them, the court seemed to take great pity on Christine, and most of the time treated her like a child. In the end, the felony charge was dropped to a misdemeanor, and Christine was given a 6-month suspended sentence and a $541 fine. Her ban from Fashion Square was also lifted, although she was still banned from the specific GameStop. This slap on the wrist didn't seem to help with her downward spiral, unfortunately. Besides the legal troubles, perhaps Christine's biggest problem was a feeling of social isolation. This is apparent in an email to an online gal pal from the time, where the autistic trans woman revealed that her only friend in real life was her mother, as everyone else in their town hated the Chandlers. She had a couple of short-lived sweethearts, but just like all the others, they turned out to be nothing more than trolls. As all of this was happening, Christine continued posting regularly to her Facebook account. This brings us to August 10th, when she wrote a response to an article about a mother and son who had been arrested for incest. Christine held the stance that since both parties were legal and consenting adults, they should not have been arrested for what they did. She even admitted to having incestuous thoughts herself, as she had occasionally experienced dreams involving her mother. After some backlash, she made sure to clarify that she had never engaged in intimate activities with any family members, and had no intention of doing so. Over the course of her court proceedings, to help make new friends, Christine began patronizing the Impulse Gay Social Club in Charlottesville, Virginia. She seemed to enjoy herself greatly here, as multiple videos were published of her dancing with other customers of the establishment. As was the story of her life, she failed to make any lasting relationships here, and every night she would return to her lonely, cluttered home. Besides therapy, what Christine desperately needed at this time was companionship, and she began looking for it anywhere she could. In August of 2016, the Sonichu creator discovered the YouTube channel Planet Dolan, and rapidly became enamored with a voice actor and animator for the channel, Danielle Pitts, better known by her screen name Doopy Do-Over. Christine began replying to Doopy's tweets frequently, trying to relate to her. It took no time at all for trolls to notice this, as they messaged Doopy en masse to warn her about Chris Chan's past behavior towards gal pals. In response to the concerned parties, Danielle made a public statement on the matter.
I've been following the Chris Chan saga since the beginning. I know everything that he's done. And yeah, it's pretty shitty. But what other people have done to him/her has been pretty shitty too. I'm also just not the type of person to turn someone away when they're being nothing but kind to me. It may be a fake, it may be a show, but I'm not emotionally invested in this enough to care.
Things continued like this for a while until June of 2017, when Christine began pledging to Doopy's Patreon page at the $50 tier. This earned her a sketch commission of her character Rosechew. In addition, she also paid the artist another $25 for a new profile pic, which she still uses on a few of her social media accounts to this very day. In August, Doopy created a second Patreon account dubbed Kitten Bell, a space for her to share her more risque artwork. The infatuated Chris Chan soon pledged to this new page as well, and began requesting Doopy to draw lewd art of My Little Pony characters, although it seems these drawings were never made. People became skeptical of this spending, as Christine was still frequently posting on Facebook begging her followers for money that she claims was to help care for her aging parent. Despite the criticism, Christine's replies to Doopy's tweets only grew in intensity and frequency. She seemed to believe that by donating to the Patreon, this made them better friends. She began referring to her as dear and darling, although these names of endearment were not uncommon for Christine to use on Twitter. On one infamous occasion, the Sonichu creator made a tweet in celebration of National Girlfriend Day, in which she tagged Doopy Do-Over and pretty much the entire main cast of My Little Pony as well. This proved to be the last straw, as due to Christine's overly familiar behavior and the large number of trolls who could be found in the replies to every tweet she made, her Twitter account started getting blocked by the voice actors she loves so much. Doopy took things a step further, replying to Christine bluntly, telling her that they did not know each other, though this appeared to fall on deaf ears. At this point, Doopy realized the trolls were correct in their warnings. She had underestimated the comic book creator's mental state and had allowed things to go on for far too long. The artist offered her biggest fan a full refund for the Patreon pledges as she no longer felt comfortable accepting them due to the Chandler's money problems. After this, Doopy blocked Chris Chan. This was not the end of the story though, as Christine was not yet ready to give up talking to her fantasy gal pals. She created a new Twitter account, Nightstar2891, based around her original self-insert My Little Pony character. She was able to use this account to circumvent the blocks and continue replying to the tweets of her favorite voice actors. In order to keep up the ruse, Nightstar even had full conversations with Christine's main account, in an attempt to make onlookers believe they were two separate people. This plan failed. What Christine really needed at this moment was not Twitter, but a real friend to help her get back on track, after a recent string of bad decisions. Unfortunately, that's not what she received.
Captain's log, stardate 10172017. Do I have to do that every time because I have the C-log and the date written in typed in the title of this video?
In October of 2017, Christine caught the eye of a young man named Mr. Joshua Weiss. Josh's interests seemed to mirror those of the original trolls who first discovered Chris Chan all those years ago, meaning he wanted to discover just how much this person was willing to believe. And since her delusions had only grown since 2008, he decided he could go bigger than any miscreant had ever gone before. This all began when Joshua introduced Christine to Hyperdimension Neptunia, an anime based on a video game series about characters living in a world separated into different regions, each representing different video game consoles. This show played on Christine's already warped view of fiction, as she seemingly already believed that all fictional works existed in their own dimensions. The world of this anime and its setting, Game Industria, showed her a place where all those realities could exist simultaneously, which was an idea she quickly became obsessed with. Upon weakening Christine's defenses, Joshua moved on to phase 2 of the plan. This involved convincing Christine that Quickville and Game Industria were being invaded by Russian forces. He did this by adopting the identity of John, a soldier from the fictional world, and sending her edited pictures and audio clips that he created to further his story. He concocted fake news headlines showing the invasion of Quickville and spliced together audio from the TV show and a few other games to make the war sound more believable.
I'm IF, a gust of beautiful wind that blows through...
Eventually, Joshua was joined by a few friends, including a man named Stephen Boyd, to help devise new ways to influence the mentally unwell woman. Together, they would come to be known as the Idea Guys. With their claws now thoroughly dug into Christine's mind, the team went to work manipulating her any way they saw fit. Now that she believed them to be real people from her fictional world of Quickville, they realized they could mess with the canon of her comic series by telling her about supposedly real events that were happening to her characters. And since she now believed all of this to be really happening in another dimension, she had no choice but to take it as gospel. The Idea Guys altered Christine's world in a number of different ways, some much worse than others. For example, they subtly began altering Quickville to be more like World War II era Germany, such as stating that the town was now home to prison camps full of large ovens, and giving the comic its own police known as the Quick Stapo. In addition, they also spoke of a prophecy which stated that her fictional daughter Crystal, who was previously her sister, would be born as the offspring of Sonic Chew and Christine. If you recall, in the already existing canon, Christine was Sonic-Chu's mother, so the idea guys added the detail that, if she drew a picture of Crystal being conceived, Christine would not have to have intercourse with the cartoon character to fulfill the prophecy. This saga somehow became even more convoluted as time went on, but Christine did as she was told by the idea guys no matter how insane. As if that wasn't confusing enough, the trolls also somehow managed to convince her that she was in a polyamorous marriage with two of her characters, Magi-chan and Kryzel, the latter of whom was canonically 15 years of age. After this, the idea guys continued adding more and more of their own concepts into their mentally disabled victims comic. Even though she strongly disagreed with most of their changes, she continued implementing them regardless. When this was happening, she never revealed to the public what the idea guys were doing, as to her knowledge anyway, they were simply messengers from another dimension. As her life was collapsing, they had taken the only thing she had left, her imagination, and permanently tainted it. Unfortunately for Christine, their ambitions were growing. You see, the idea guys weren't just manipulating Christine's fantasies, as they soon began trying to get some monetary gain out of their scheme as well. They did this by tricking her into buying video games and gift cards for them, and these purchases soon reached upwards of $6,000. As if this weren't bad enough, they also once demanded Chris-chan pay them 20 grand, or they would report her to the FBI for being a pedo, due to her supposed relationship with the comic book character Kryzel. They also threatened to destroy Quickville if the money didn't arrive in a timely fashion. To these threats, Christine withheld one of her family's monthly mortgage payments in order to pay them off, which nearly made her and Barbara homeless. In addition to all this, the idea guys also told their victim that they had a Death Star-like weapon aimed at Quickville, which they would use to destroy the city unless Christine filmed herself defecating on the floor and punching herself and her mother in the face. While she allegedly did as she was told, the video in question has never been released publicly. Surprisingly, despite the insanity of the situation at hand, public interest in Chris-chan had begun to wane. The Chandlers were more dysfunctional than ever, yet the internet at large had not been paying as close attention to her as they did in years past. Normally, this would have been a good thing, but ironically, when she needed the undivided attention of the outside world for help, they were nowhere to be found. That all changed in February of 2018 though, when a YouTuber by the name of Gino Samuel started up an ongoing documentary series in an attempt to catalog the entirety of Chris-chan's story, beginning from birth and slowly making his way towards the modern day. These uploads quickly grew in popularity, exposing the Chris-chan legend to a whole new generation. While this was all happening, with these new eyes suddenly on Christine and her mental health quickly deteriorating due to the idea guys, she decided to take a trip to the Too Many Games convention in June of 2018. The travel expenses were acquired easily from the help of her supporters on GoFundMe. At the event, Christine took the opportunity to meet her fans and take photos with them. While things started off positively, as the day progressed, she began getting a bit too affectionate with people, kissing many of those who approached her without consent. This made her fellow attendees feel uncomfortable, resulting in Christine being asked to leave by Too Many Games organizers. In response, she had a complete breakdown, curling up into a ball in the middle of the convention floor. Chris-chan remained in this position for quite a while, but quickly she was escorted to the security office where she was able to calm down. After the incident, the now banned guest went to Facebook to angrily give her side of the story.
One question. What is wrong with this world? A peck on the cheek from a celebrity that one likes positively, mind you, is not offensive to me. What really ticks me off is any display of likes and affection is viewed as taboo and more offensive than bloody, gory violence.
In the past, this would have been an event many would have laughed at, but at this point, it had just become sad. This was a person approaching middle age and making a scene in public like a toddler. Christine was acting erratic, and with her only confidants being the idea guys, she would need someone to save her. Interestingly enough though, it would turn out that Chris-chan's savior would not be a friend, but instead someone she once considered an enemy. Null. Being the creator of the Quickie forms and current owner of Kiwi Farms, this Chris Chan aficionado was informed of the Idea Guy's extortion by Christine's old gal pal, Anna McLaren, as she had noticed that her friend had been acting strange as of late. Shocked by what he uncovered, Null was quick to step in and managed to convince Christine to grant him access to her email and Discord accounts, so he could keep the Idea Guys at bay. Realizing all the crimes they had committed, the group of trolls were quick to vanish into the night as they knew the jig was up. Null also got into contact with law enforcement to see what could be done. Luckily, Christine had kept every receipt of the purchases she made for the Idea Guys, but despite this abundance of evidence, no legal action was ever taken against them. After this intervention, many breathed a sigh of relief now that Chris Chan was free from the influence of her manipulators. However, they had still left a significant impact on both her finances and mental state. At a time like this, with her reality at the worst it had ever been, Christine needed that escape into imagination more than ever. This was the beginning of a new concept known as the Dimensional Merge. Put simply, this was the residual impact of the Idea Guys' manipulation. Even though they were out of the picture, Christine still believed in their concept of multiple universes intersecting. According to her, the Dimensional Merge was going to be an event in which our reality, dubbed Dimension 1218, was to combine with the reality in which Sonic-Chu, his friends, and all other fictional characters resided, dubbed Dimension C197. According to Christine, she was to be the one to usher in this merge and would become a Christ-like figure in the new world. She first announced the merge in October of 2018, and stated that it was to happen in November of that same year. Since the date she set was the same as the anniversary of the infamous Jonestown Massacre, many believe the Dimensional Merge to have been at least partially influenced by the Idea Guys, as they often enjoyed inserting references to historical atrocities into Quickfill lore. To everyone watching, it was painfully obvious that the merge was the latest in a long line of strange and self-destructive coping mechanisms Chris Chan had been using for years to avoid confronting her real problems. It seemed to be the escalation of a desire she had for her entire life, to turn reality into her fictional playground, a paradise where she never had to grow up and was in control. Of all the details about this supposed event that Christine discussed publicly, none were more tragic and heartbreaking than those concerning her father, Bob. According to her, Bob was living safe and sound in Quickfill, having now taken the form of an anthropomorphic beaver called Robert Chu. The beaver motif was likely another creation of the Idea Guys, referencing Bob's old nickname, the Lumberjack. The idea of Quickfill being something resembling an afterlife had been seen before, namely after Christine's dog Patty had passed away. However, Christine now appeared to fully believe that she would actually be seeing her father again soon. In the time since Bob's death, one misfortune after another had befallen the lonely internet personality. She had no time to grieve and accept that he was gone, and now figured out a solution so she would never have to. When the supposed day of the merge came and went, Christine was quick to alter the date to December 31st, 2018. That day passed as well, and she once again moved the goalpost, this time blaming Quickfill's bureaucratic red tape for grinding the progress to a halt. The most notable update for the Dimensional Merge came in April of 2020 when the self-proclaimed Messiah stated that they swapped bodies with Sonic-Chu. For nearly a year after this point, she remained in this state, speaking as though she were her character and pretending as though Christine had taken Sonic-Chu's place in Quickfill. In every video, tweet, and interview Christine was a part of, she maintained this delusion, never once breaking character. She held strong to this fantasy until February of 2021, when she claimed that the two had finally switched back. Many feared that this would become the final saga in Christine's life, especially due to how much it appeared her mother's health had deteriorated. Though her cameos were minimal, the times Barbara did show up on screen revealed her to be extremely frail, and sometimes incomprehensible.
Give us some wisdom.
I don't know any right now.
Come on. You got a lot of wisdom in your head. What are you doing to me?
Be smart. Act smart. That's all.
Okay.
Christine at one point even offhandedly referenced her needing meal replacement shakes. Barbara's advanced age caused concern, and not just for her, but her daughter's future as well. There was uncertainty over where Kris Chan would go after her mom passed. In order to pay off the $4,000 of credit card debt she accrued, Barbara took out a reverse mortgage on their home, meaning that upon her death, the property would be confiscated by the bank. The person most serious about solving this would be none other than Null, once again returning in an attempt to help his website's namesake. Throughout 2020, he appointed himself as the manager for Christine, being given access to her social media accounts and emails. Null made it his goal to create a viable future for Christine, in which she could retain financial sustainability upon Barbara's death. He even created an LLC to purchase the property, and let Christine live there without it being considered their direct income.
My vision was that Chris would have a storefront with a limited stock of commissions. Chris would receive commissions, I'd make sure he'd do them, and then the money would go to an LLC bank account I had some control of. My thought was that maybe the LLC can buy a property, and then somehow let Chris live there without it being considered as income, i.e. living expenses are paid for by the company. I could then also supplement his insurance and put money into a 401k for him. This could be set up, managed on autopilot, and it would work because Chris was a living legend and his general inaccessibility created scarcity. No random person could ask him for an interview or drawing because he ignored everyone. People wanted those things, but they couldn't get them just by asking, so they'd pay.
And with that, Null set out to finally get Kris Chan's life in order after a decade and a half of trolling, with many hoping that it would finally bring stability to the Sonic2 creator's life. But if you've watched the documentary up until this point, you've probably realized that this was wishful thinking, as the Chandler family saga was going to somehow become worse than ever before.
Hello everybody, this is Christine Chandler coming to you live from home once again. I and all the other deities know how long. Quite a long time! It's been a long time! I'm sorry. I've been really heavy in meditation.
With the assistance of her former foe, Christine finally had a plan to start making a stable living for the first time in her life through videos and art commissions. And with this newfound ability to make consistent money, Null saw this as a great opportunity to help her attend the ever-free Northwest Brony Convention in Washington State. Christine's original plan was to drive from Virginia all the way to the Great Northwest, sleeping in parking lots along the way. Null saw how unfeasible this was, and instead offered to create a GoFundMe in order to purchase flight tickets for her. In exchange, he stipulated Christine had to work for some of it, placing tiers on the page offering a shout-out or drawing from the creator of Sonic2. The campaign quickly surpassed its initial goal of $750, and surprisingly, she was consistently completing the work assigned, finishing 5 drawings every day. For once, everything appeared to be going right. Donors were thrilled to receive their commissions, Christine was excited to attend the event, and Null felt accomplished in finally having taught her the value of $1. But little did the Kiwi Farms founder know that something more nefarious was being concocted behind the scenes. Because as it turns out, Kris Chan's interest in the Brony event was the result of a new group of secretive trolls. Entirely unbeknownst to Null, a group of college-age students had gotten in contact with Christine on their own. Having been inspired by the new wave of Kris Chan YouTube content, 2 individuals took a particular interest. The first was a woman named Fiona, who, like Christine, was autistic. But unlike previous gal pals, she professed a genuine attraction to Christine, as she sympathized with her many struggles. Prior to the 2 even talking, she publicly fantasized about them having a true and honest relationship, hyperfixating to the point of even attaining moderator status on the official subreddit. By all accounts, it seemed that Christine had at long last found her boyfriend-free girl. On the other hand, however, there was a far less innocent individual, Isabella Janke. Where Fiona was largely motivated by naivete, this new female troll was seemingly pushed by nothing more than sadism. Bella had garnered quite a reputation even before her interest into Chris Chan lore. She became infamous at her college campus for admitting to abusing animals, even once allegedly boiling a hamster alive. And she would constantly make disgusting comments about the state of her hygiene and fetishes. Under the alias Kelly Osborne, Miss Janke made an effort to involve herself into the life of Christine Weston Chandler for years, before eventually succeeding in 2021. Why was this young woman so adamant in achieving contact with the autistic trans woman? Well, her intent was to become the quote-unquote best troll of all time. And to gain that title, she was willing to do whatever it took. Fiona and Bella wouldn't meet until July of 2021, colliding with each other while in the online orbit of Christine. By this point, Isabella Janke had managed to position herself as the greatest influence upon Chris Chan, likely able to exploit her long-standing desire for a white boyfriend-free girl. Though others including Null were aware of her existence, few outside of her small Discord clique grasped how much control she truly had, even having access to the Chandler's credit card information. In the off chance that any of her actions were uncovered, Isabella planned to pin Fiona as responsible. In exchange for her complicitness, Isabella promised to make Fiona seduce the comic artist, and convince Christine to attend Everfree Northwest, where Chris Chan and Fiona would finally be able to embrace each other. But despite Fiona's genuine interest, Christine surprisingly showed a shocking level of indifference. At one point, the Sonichu creator remarked about having a vision that Fiona would find a college-aged boyfriend, and asked for an open relationship. Regardless, as the convention date approached, it seemed as if the next step of Isabella's plan was coming into effect. Unknown to Fiona, there was a reason Christine may have been reluctant to the prospect of becoming intimate with her. You see, around this time, the Sonichu artist claimed to have another sweetheart in her life, the identity of whom she kept very close to her chest. She would occasionally discuss her current relationship with Null, dropping vague hints as to who it was, but only stating that she was an older woman. Chris Chan never revealed the true identity of this sexual partner to anyone. Well, anyone that is, except Isabella Janke. As it turns out, the young woman was able to coax Christine into a discreetly recorded phone call where she revealed all the intimate details about this secretive relationship, including the identity of her new lover. And this was Isabella's ultimate weapon that she believed would turn her into the greatest troll of all time. This is because the information held in that phone call would destroy Christine's life completely if it ever was revealed to the public. Bella soon shared the recording with a few of her co-conspirators, including Fiona, who was horrified with the information it contained. Fiona decided that she could not keep it a secret, and thus leaked the phone call to the internet on the night of July 29th, 2021. This was when the entire world learned the shocking truth. Christine Weston Chandler had been in a sexual relationship with her own mother.
Well, among which just mainly I was really, really horny and I needed a true and honest relationship to come about. So obviously this was one of the best ways to do it, despite it being with the... I don't want to believe labels at all, but
right.
Obviously the incest fanfics have come true and shit.
In this recording, along with a series of text messages that also leaked simultaneously, Christine admitted to many details of the affair. According to her, God himself had given his blessing to move forward with the incestuous relationship. Chris Chan took it slow at first, allowing Barbara to quote-unquote make the first move. She then went into the specifics of the whole ordeal. This leaked recording immediately exploded in viral interest, becoming the most widely talked about Chris Chan event of all time. The story became so widespread that even mainstream news outlets covered it. In just one night, any of the goodwill that Christine had built up from the internet was destroyed. They no longer viewed her as an innocent victim whose life was ruined by bullies. In the eyes of the public, she was now a monster. Her fans turned on her, projects that she was to be involved in cut ties, but the worst part of it all for Christine was that her ever-free Northwest invite was revoked. People began reporting Christine en masse to local authorities in Ruckersville. In the state of Virginia, incest is considered a Class 5 felony, punishable by up to 10 years behind bars. Many also believe that, if it could be proven that Barbara was not of sound mind, then a case could have been made that Christine was guilty of sexual assault as well. Soon after, police conducted a welfare check at the Chandler household. This resulted in an emergency protective order being placed on Christine, barring her from setting foot in the home for at least a week. In the meantime, she chose to live at a nearby Regency Inn. As it soon turned out though, her stay would not be a long one. On August 1st, 2021, Christine was arrested at the inn on the charge of incest. There to document the event was infamous online provocateur Ethan Ralph, who in Chris Chan cosplay live-streamed Christine being led out of her room in handcuffs. Surprisingly, she was calm, compliant, and seemed in unexpectedly good spirits.
Christine, is the merge coming?
Alright.
It's happening now. We're on the burn.
The merge, it's happening right now, isn't it?
Right now, it is.
We're living it.
It's happening right now.
Farewell, Chris Chan!
The dimensional merge is happening right now.
Following her arrest, Christine was held in the Central Virginia Regional Jail without bond. While she was originally filed as a female due to her legally changing her gender on her driver's license in 2016, the booking soon changed to male. From all accounts, it appears that Chris Chan is handling incarceration fairly well, and was recently transferred to a mental institution. Her communication with the outside world since being arrested has been through letters. In one infamous example, Christine claims to be the literal reincarnation of Jesus Christ, and stated that God had called upon her to touch Barbara in order to heal, cleanse, and clean her of all her past sins and regrets. And with no friends, no toys, no conventions, and most importantly, no internet access, it appears to many that this might finally be the conclusion of the Chris Chan saga, as it seems that for the foreseeable future at least, the internet legend will sit in a room by themselves with nothing more than the delusions that have built up in their head for the last 40 years.
Why is this so low?
That was just the way it was built.
It seems like bad design.
Don't look at me. I'm not the one who designed this gazebo.
Okay.
From your memories.
So that's what you did with your...
And any ailments you had, I would just healed them right now. So, like, you know, if you were feeling ill or something, I would have healed them.
Sure.
Because I did heal something on my mother that time, and she believed it.
I kind of have to...
And I did that more than once, also. She felt better.
That's good. I kind of have to go to the bathroom right now. Could you, like, relieve that of me?
No, you'd have to...
I gotta do that myself? Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, I'll do that later.
I'm not an outside bladder.
Oh, okay, good. That's good to know. Keep that in mind.
I'm an outlet.
Your healing abilities are limited to that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Have you ever talked to Gino?
Yeah. I've DM'd him just saying, hey, thanks, you're doing pretty well, keep up the good work, just essentially supportive.
Something interesting there that you had told me about before is that Magichan Sanachu, your husband, he has always lived within you, is that right?
No, he's lived out. He's not within.
Or he's always been there with you.
Yeah, he's always been there with me.
Yeah, he's always been there with you, and he had the wisdom to know that, you know, not to react to all the trolls and everything, and that it was all trolls. But he is it right that he? Why didn't he tell you? Why didn't he tell you that?
Because of the Iron Curtain. He's standing right here, right now.
Right there?
Yeah.
Okay.
But wait. So yeah, we got the Iron Curtain that's been dividing us, and I've had to be spiritually open. I wasn't as spiritually open, or I wasn't as open to him to hear him at the time, and And this definitely became more obvious to me as I looked up in Geno Samuel, and then there were like a whole bunch of cringe moments where even Magic Chan was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe she did this."
What was that quote?
Quoting just when I quoted Leviticus, to shame gays. And then took that, and they ended up taking that from like Family Guy. And even Magic Chan had said back then, "You weren't supposed to say that literally. Family Guy was mostly parodic and jokes, and you weren't supposed to take that literally, Christian. What the hell was wrong with you?" Something like that.
What does your mom feel about your husband and the interdimension and stuff? Does she believe any of it?
She has grown to believe it. She was kind of neutral. She was neutral about it at first and hesitant, but then the events happened and more events, and I managed to prove my psychic powers and abilities to her, and she actually did manage to speak with Magic Chan and the others at one point or another. So yeah, so she's a believer.
What did you do to show her that, to prove it to her that this was going on and you had these powers?
Well, among which I can literally do this. I can heal people and essentially access their memories a little bit just by